Then Meek Mill came, but he couldn't get financing.
Meek Mill couldn't give him financing?
They don't.
These guys, they're full of shit.
Yeah, they're full of
50 Cent is rapidly exposing Meek Mill for being broke. On top of that, a realtor exposed that Meek Mill got denied financing for a $5.2 million house, the same house Jalen Hurts nearly bought without blinking. The internet exploded. But the real story isn't about one house. It's about what the banks saw that we didn't. The house that told the truth. You know, there's something almost poetic about the way the truth has a habit of sneaking out through the most unexpected doors. And in this case, that door happened to belong to a $5.2 million house sitting pretty in Voorhees, New Jersey. Because what started as a casual conversation between a real estate insider and a YouTuber about luxury properties and celebrity clients somehow turned into one of the most embarrassing public exposures a rapper has endured in recent memory. And the rapper in question? None other than Meek Mill, the self-proclaimed dream chaser, the man who has spent the better part of his career rapping about stacking paper, flipping millions, and living a life so lavish that the rest of us could only dream about it from the outside looking in. But according to the person who was actually trying to sell him this house, Meek Mill couldn't even get approved for the financing to buy it. Now let's set the scene here because context is everything when you're telling a story like this. A real estate agent or insider went on record recounting how they had shown this gorgeous property in Voorhees, New Jersey to two very high-profile prospective buyers. The first was Philadelphia Eagles quarterback Jalen Hurts, a man who, by all accounts, is one of the most financially disciplined athletes in professional sports today. Hurts came through, looked at the property, loved what he saw, and was ready to pull the trigger on the deal right then and there.
Jalen Hurts came by.
Oh, really?
But he wanted the house done by July, not now.
See, the only issue Hurts had wasn't money, it was time. He needed the house completed and move-in ready within a 2-month window, which, as the agent explained, was simply not feasible for a property of that scale and caliber.
Last July.
He loved the house. He was going to give, at that time, it was $5.2 million. Finished. I said, listen, I'll be honest with you, there's no way I can finish this house.
And that right there tells you everything you need to know about the difference between Jalen Hurts and what came next. Hurts, the man with a $255 million NFL contract, the kind of structured, guaranteed income that makes bank managers smile from ear to ear. He didn't blink at the price tag. He blinked at the calendar. The money was never the problem. And that distinction is absolutely critical to what happened when the next prospective buyer walked through that same front door. Because then Meek Mill showed up. And what happened next is the part of this story that set the entire internet on fire and had social media dragging Meek from one end of the timeline to the other. According to this same real estate insider, Meek Mill toured the property, presumably liked what he saw just the same as Hurts had, and decided he wanted to move forward with the purchase. But there was one small problem. Actually, there was one enormous career-defining, reputation-shattering problem.
Then Meek Mill came, but he couldn't get financing.
Meek Mill couldn't give him financing?
They don't.
These guys, they're full of shit.
Yeah, they're full of shit.
Let that sink in for a moment. Meek Mill, the rapper who has spent years flexing on Instagram, posting pictures of luxury watches, designer outfits, and stacks of cash, could not get approved for a mortgage on a $5.2 million house. The banks looked at whatever Meek presented to them and said, "No thank you, sir. We're going to have to pass on this one." And the real estate agent didn't stop there. They went ahead and made it abundantly clear that in their professional experience, this wasn't unusual when it came to rappers.
Guys, they're full of shit.
Yeah, they're full of shit.
Wow. Well, he's friends with Mike Rubin.
The agent even pointed out the irony of Meek's social circle, how Meek is regularly seen courtside at Philadelphia 76ers games, rubbing elbows with billionaire Michael Rubin, the CEO of Fanatics and one of the wealthiest men in American sports. The implication being that if Meek truly had the connections and the relationships he flaunts so publicly, surely someone in that circle could have helped him close the deal. And yet there he was, denied by the bank, exposed by a realtor, and trending on every social media platform for all the wrong reasons. Now, social media absolutely ran with this story. Users on X, formerly known as Twitter, amplified the clip relentlessly, using it as ammunition to highlight what they saw as the fundamental difference between athletes and entertainers when it comes to real, verifiable wealth. The conversation quickly shifted from being about one house to being about an entire culture of illusion. The idea that rappers project images of extreme wealth without actually having the financial foundation to back any of it up. Critics online pointed out that Meek's inability to secure a mortgage despite an estimated net worth of around $20 million suggested deeper financial issues, things like poor credit history, high existing debt, or the kind of inconsistent income that makes lenders nervous. And here's where the comparison between Meek and Jalen Hurts becomes even more devastating. Hurts is widely praised for living a remarkably frugal lifestyle despite his massive deal. The man reportedly rents an apartment in Philadelphia during the season and owns a relatively modest home in Houston. His near purchase of this $5.2 million property would have been a rare splurge for him, and one he could have afforded without breaking a sweat. Meanwhile, Meek, the man who raps about millions like they grow on trees, couldn't even get a bank to believe he was good for the money. But here's the thing that makes this story so much more layered than just a simple case of a rapper getting caught with an empty wallet. Meek Mill's estimated net worth sits at approximately $20 million as of early 2026, a figure that has remained largely consistent across multiple reports going back to at least 2023. That's not nothing. That's not broke by any normal person's definition of the word. But when you're a rapper whose entire brand is built on the perception of unlimited wealth, $20 million starts to look a lot less impressive, especially when the banks are telling you that your money isn't good enough for a $5 million house. The cracks in the foundation. Now, to truly understand how Meek Mill ended up in a position where a real estate agent could casually drop his business on a YouTube clip and have the entire internet questioning his bank account, you have to go back, way back, to the series of financial body blows that have been quietly chipping away at Meek's empire for years. Because this isn't a story that starts and ends with one denied mortgage application. This is a story about a man who has been fighting an uphill battle against the system, the industry, and sometimes even himself for the better part of 2 decades. Let's start with the legal troubles, because if there's one thing that has defined Meek Mill's adult life more than his music, more than his relationships, more than his beefs, it's his seemingly never-ending entanglement with the criminal justice system. It all traces back to January 24th, 2007, when a 19-year-old Meek was arrested by Philadelphia's Narcotics Field Unit on charges of assault, drug possession, and illegal gun possession. Meek has always maintained that officers used excessive force during that arrest, claiming they used his head as a battering ram to enter his home, and what followed from that single arrest was a 12-year odyssey through the courts that would drain his finances, interrupt his career, and fundamentally shape the trajectory of his entire life. He was convicted in August 2008 and sentenced in January 2009 to 11.5 to 23 months in prison plus 7 years of probation. And it was that probation, those 7 seemingly innocuous years of court-mandated supervision, that became the anchor around Meek's neck, because from the moment he stepped out of prison in June 2009, it felt like the system was designed to pull him back in. Probation violation in 2011 for testing positive for opiates. Another incident in October 2012, when he was arrested during a traffic stop for suspected marijuana possession. Then, December 2012, another violation for failing to report travel plans. July 2014, yet another violation that landed him 5 more months behind bars and 5 additional years of probation stacked on top of what he was already serving. Every time Meek took a step forward in his career, every time he dropped an album or booked a tour or secured an endorsement deal, there was Judge Janice Brinkley waiting with another hearing, another restriction, another reason to put him back in a cage. In February 2016, he was sentenced to 90 days of house arrest with an ankle monitor, prohibited from working or traveling outside of Philadelphia. For a rapper whose income depends almost entirely on touring and performing, that's not just a legal punishment, that's a financial death sentence. And then came November 2017, the moment that turned Meek Mill's legal saga from a personal nightmare into a national conversation. He was sentenced to 2 to 4 years in state prison for probation violations, including a failed drug test and non-compliance with travel restrictions. The outcry was immediate and deafening. Jay-Z, Kevin Hart, and dozens of other celebrities rallied to his cause. The hashtag #ShotYourFreeMeekMill trended worldwide. And when he was finally released in April 2018 after the Pennsylvania Supreme Court ordered his bail, it felt like a cultural moment, a vindication not just for Meek, but for everyone who had ever been trapped in the revolving door of America's probation system. But here's what people don't talk about nearly enough. The financial toll of all of this was absolutely catastrophic. Meek reportedly reportedly spent upwards of $30 million on legal defense, appeals, and related costs over the decade-plus saga. $30 million. Think about that number for a second. That's more than his entire estimated net worth today. And that doesn't even account for the tens of millions more he lost in potential earnings from tours he couldn't do, albums he couldn't promote, and collaborations that fell through because he was either behind bars or under house arrest. One flight change due to weather, a technical probation violation, reportedly cost him over $30 million in lost income alone. And even after the legal nightmare officially ended in August 2019, when he pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor gun charge that resolved the case with no further penalty, the financial aftershocks kept coming. In February 2025, Meek was contesting a $2.8 million IRS tax bill from 2013, claiming he only earned $2 million that year. When the IRS is coming after you for more money than you say you made in an entire year, that tells you something about the precariousness of the financial tightrope these artists walk. And then there's the industry side of things, the part of Meek's financial story that might be even more infuriating than the legal system's abuses. Meek has publicly accused Jay-Z and Roc Nation of failing to honor a $55 million agreement tied to his Dream Chasers label partnership. According to Meek, Jay-Z promised the full amount, but only paid $5 million up front, with the rest supposedly coming in installments that simply never materialized. Meek says he was broke at the time and felt pressured into signing. He alleges that when he asked for the remaining funds, he was told to get in the booth and rap to earn more. Now, here's someone who actually knew Meek back in the day talking about the kind of environment that produces these situations. The idea that when someone from the streets gets a little bit of money, the people around them don't tell them the truth. They just let them do whatever they want. And that's a crucial insight because it speaks to the broader pattern of what happens to rappers who come from nothing and suddenly find themselves surrounded by yes men who have a financial incentive to keep the good times rolling, regardless of whether those good times are sustainable. Meanwhile, Meek's real estate track record tells its own complicated story. In March 2023, he listed an 8-bedroom, 9.5 bathroom estate in Atlanta's Sandy Springs area, a property he claimed he never even lived in, despite owning it for several years. He initially tried to sell it himself on social media for $25 million after his realtor struggled to move it for nearly 2 years. It ultimately sold to Rick Ross for $4.2 million in cash, a massive haircut from the asking price that suggests Meek was desperate to unload the property and free up whatever liquidity he could. And in late 2025, Meek publicly sought $5 million in independent funding for a new album, book, and short film, criticizing label deals for ruining the game and stripping artists of control. He even warned he'd be blackballed if he couldn't secure the money. When a rapper with a reported $20 million net worth is publicly asking for $5 million to fund his own projects, that's not a man who has comfortable access to his wealth. The vultures circle. Now, if there's one person on this planet who has made it his life's mission to kick a man while he's down and do it with a smile on his face and a meme in his hand, it's Curtis 50 Cent Jackson. And when this story about Meek Mill getting denied for a mortgage broke wide open across social media, you could practically hear 50 rubbing his hands together from wherever he was sitting, ready to add another chapter to one of hip-hop's most one-sided rivalries. To understand why 50 Cent took such obvious delight in Meek's embarrassment, you need to understand that the beef between these two men goes back nearly a decade. It all started in January 2016 when Meek Mill released his 4/4 EP featuring a track called Gave 'Em Hope that took direct aim at 50 Cent, accusing him of ghostwriting claims, financial troubles, and personal indiscretions. That was a bold move on Meek's part, perhaps too bold, because 50 Cent is not the kind of man who lets a slight go unanswered. 50 fired back with a barrage of Instagram posts, memes, and public ridicule that made Meek look like he had picked a fight with a buzzsaw. He mocked Meek's album sales, his relationship with Nicki Minaj, and his legal troubles, all with the kind of gleeful pettiness that only 50 Cent can deliver. And here's the thing about 50's approach to beefs. He doesn't make diss tracks. He doesn't need to. He fights with memes, with Instagram posts, with perfectly timed jabs that cut deeper than any punchline ever could. And he's been completely transparent about this strategy.
Look, you see Meek Mill, I didn't say nothing.
Nah, I'm gonna have to disagree with
nothing,
you.
right? Because he didn't deserve it.
You didn't make a record.
See, that's the genius of 50 Cent's approach. He didn't need to step into the studio and craft 16 bars. He just needed to post the right meme at the right time.
But you made memes.
I didn't make one record, not one punchline.
And when asked why he didn't bother giving Meek the respect of an actual diss track, 50's answer was brutally honest.
Because he didn't deserve the punchline.
Right.
Because you're getting bodied by R&B singing. The boy said the line already. You gotta live with that.
That last line, "you gotta live with that," might be the most devastating thing anyone has ever said about Meek Mill in the context of a rap beef. Because it's not a diss, it's a dismissal. And sometimes a dismissal hurts far worse than any punchline ever could. The two reportedly squashed their beef in July 2017, with Meek claiming they met up and moved past it. But truces with 50 Cent have the structural integrity of wet tissue paper, and by 2024, the rivalry was back in full swing. When Meek defended Diddy's son, King Combs, after 50 mocked a diss track, 50 responded by mocking Meek's vacation habits and low album sales, posting things like, "You sold 6K copies your last project, you should not be on vacation." In September 2024, 50 trolled Meek with a video offering $100,000 to identify pranksters targeting him, captioning it with a laugh that echoed across the internet. But 50's trolling is only one dimension of the pressure Meek has faced. There was also 50's encounter with Meek in person, and the restraint it took to not let things get physical.
People who pick fights with people who don't want to fight, those are punks. Like, there's a punks. Meek Mills, when I ran into him finally, he said, "Yo, come here, let me."
50 described wanting to punch Meek during that face-to-face conversation, but choosing not to. A decision that, knowing 50, probably had less to do with peace and more to do with the fact that a meme hits harder than a fist and doesn't come with assault charges.
Talk to you. I need to talk to you like a man on the side. Put me to the side. And he was talking, and I was looking at him, and I wanted to punch him.
And then there's the broader conversation about what Meek Mill actually built or failed to build beyond his own personal brand. Oshino, a Philadelphia rap veteran who knows the scene inside and out, offered a damning assessment.
If you just take a step back, Meek has never actually built a company.
That observation cuts to the heart of the matter. Oshino pointed out that Dream Chasers, for all its cool branding, has never really launched successful artists.
Dream Chasers is a cool name, it's got a cool logo, but there's never really been artists that have come out from Dream Chasers that have been successful.
And then the most damning verdict of all, that Meek is good at being Meek, and that's about it.
Dream Chasers is just Meek Mill's company that represents Meek Mill. That's it.
Now look, it's easy to pile on a man when the internet has already decided he's the punchline. But there's something genuinely tragic about Meek's story when you step back and look at the full picture. This is a man who came from absolutely nothing, who has been open and honest about the depths of poverty he experienced growing up.
I was broke. Yeah, when you see me, I had nappy braids. Yeah, my stomach was hurting. It really was hurting. I really starved some nights, man.
When someone tells you they starved as a child, when they tell you their stomach was hurting from hunger, you begin to understand why the image of wealth becomes so important to them. It's not just about showing off. It's about proving to yourself and to the world that you escaped the worst of what life had to offer. And maybe that's the most heartbreaking part of this entire story, that the very trauma that drove Meek to chase dreams of wealth is the same trauma that made him vulnerable to the kind of financial mismanagement and industry exploitation that now has people calling him broke. The broader pattern is well documented and devastating. MC Hammer blew through $40 million and filed for bankruptcy. Lil' Kim declared bankruptcy with $4 million in debts. The list goes on and on. Artists from marginalized communities who achieve sudden, extraordinary wealth and then watch it evaporate because the system was never designed to help them keep it. Meek has transitioned to full independence as of mid-2025, now retaining 100% of his music profits after years of receiving only 13% under previous deals. He has business ventures including a co-ownership stake in sports apparel retailer Lids and a stake in Fanatics. He co-founded the Reform Alliance with Jay-Z that has raised over $30 million for criminal justice reform. The man isn't sitting around doing nothing, but perception is reality in hip-hop. And right now, the perception is that Meek Mill, the dream chaser, the man who rapped about championships and expensive pain, couldn't even get a bank to say yes to a house that Jalen Hurts could have bought with his signing bonus. And that, more than any diss track or meme that 50 Cent could ever post, might be the thing Meek Mill has to live with for a very, very long time. Love this video? Click on these cards for more.